On a quiet summer night in Los Angeles, 2 lives were taken with a level of brutality that shocked the nation. But what happened in those final moments? And how did a simple walk home and a returned pair of glasses spiral into one of the most controversial trials in American history? Tonight, we revisit a case that still divides public opinion nearly 3 decades later. A case where evidence, emotion, and the state of a divided society collided in a courtroom watched by millions. Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman were killed on June 12, 1994, outside Nicole's condominium in Brentwood. The scene was violent, the timeline painfully narrow, and the clues, scattered in blood, footprints, and fibers, began pointing investigators towards someone whose name the country already knew well. Former football star and public figure O.J. Simpson. To understand the intensity of this story, we must start with the relationship at the heart of it. Nicole and O.J. Simpson had divorced 2 years earlier, yet their history remained heavy. Police reports, 911 calls, and photographs documented repeated episodes of domestic violence. Friends spoke of fear that lingered even after the marriage ended. For Nicole, peace was something she was constantly trying to reclaim. But on that night in June, she never made it inside her home. When investigators arrived, they followed a trail that stretched from the front walkway to the alleyway, and then, miles away, to Simpson's estate in Rockingham. Blood drops matched 3 people, Nicole, Ron, and Simpson. A bloody glove recovered behind Nicole's home had a match. Its twin was found on Simpson's property. DNA, still unfamiliar to many at the time, formed the backbone of the prosecution's case. Yet the story did not move forward in a straight line. Instead, it twisted into questions about police bias, evidence handling, and the fairness of a system already under public scrutiny. Just 2 years earlier, the beating of Rodney King and the destructive riots that followed had pushed trust in law enforcement to the breaking point. These tensions followed investigators into every step of the Simpson case. When detectives arrived at Simpson's home early in the investigation, one of them, Mark Furman, would later become central to the defense's argument. Furman denied ever using racist language. Later, recordings emerged proving the opposite. His credibility collapsed, and with it, the prosecution's confidence that the jury would trust the integrity of their investigation. The nation watched as the trial unfolded in real time, televised from start to finish. In the courtroom, 2 competing stories were presented. The prosecutors laid out an evidence-driven narrative. DNA traces matching Simpson, footprints from rare Italian shoes in Simpson's size, blood in the car, and a timeline that placed him unaccounted for during the window of the murders. The defense took a different approach. They challenged the reliability of the evidence, arguing contamination, mishandling, and potential misconduct. They portrayed the LAPD as a department willing to cut corners and, in the most extreme claims, willing to frame a black defendant to hide their own failures. Whether or not the jury believed that narrative entirely, it created just enough doubt to weaken the prosecution's case. And then came the demonstration that would echo through popular culture for decades. The glove. When Simpson struggled to pull it on in front of the jury, the moment became unforgettable. The phrase that followed, "If it doesn't fit, you must acquit," became symbolic of how powerful courtroom theater could be. Outside the courtroom, the country was equally divided. Some saw the evidence as overwhelming. Others believed that decades of racial tension and distrust in the justice system made it impossible to rely on the investigation. The trial became more than 2 murders. It became a reflection of America's fractured identity. Inside the courtroom, the jurors faced a monumental decision. After months of testimony, dozens of witnesses, and exhaustive cross-examination, they deliberated for only a few hours. Their verdict, not guilty, sent shockwaves across the nation. In some communities, the reaction was relief, even celebration. In others, disbelief. But the story did not end there. In 1997, a civil trial took place. With a lower burden of proof, the jury found Simpson liable for the wrongful deaths of Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman. The families received a judgment, though little compensation was ever recovered. Still, the civil verdict provided a sense of recognition, an acknowledgement of the overwhelming evidence that remained unresolved in criminal court. Over time, new interviews, documentaries, and personal accounts added more layers to the narrative. Friends described Nicole's fear in the months leading up to her death. Investigators revisited the timeline, examining the narrow window in which the murders occurred. Some pointed to Simpson's behavior after the murders, the emotional Bronco chase, the cash, the disguise, as signs of a man overwhelmed by guilt. Others argued that the spectacle magnified assumptions rather than facts. One of the most haunting parts of the story is how close Nicole and OJ's children came to discovering the scene themselves. It was only because the family dog drew attention that a neighbor arrived before the children woke. It is a reminder that behind the headlines and controversy were two families whose lives changed forever. Even today, debates continue. Some believe the evidence is undeniable. Others remain convinced the investigation was too flawed to trust. And a small number propose alternative theories involving other individuals, none of which have been supported by verified forensic or investigative findings. The official record names no other suspects. The civil judgment stands against Simpson alone. As time passed, Simpson's life remained marked by legal problems and public scrutiny. His later arrest and conviction in Nevada on unrelated charges revived discussions about accountability and consequence. When he died, public reactions once again reflected the deep divisions created by the 1995 trial. Yet perhaps the most lasting legacy of this case is not the verdict itself, but what it revealed about America. It showed how race, celebrity, media, and justice can collide in ways that reshape national conversation. It exposed the fragile trust between communities and law enforcement. It forced the country to confront uncomfortable truths about domestic violence and how often cries for help are ignored until it is too late. And above all, it reminded us that while the courtroom battle dominated headlines, two innocent people, Nicole Brown Simpson and Ronald Goldman, lost their lives in an act of violence that should never be overshadowed. Nearly 30 years later, we continue to ask, what should justice look like? How do we separate evidence from emotion and truth from spectacle? And how can society rebuild trust when institutions falter at the most critical moments? What do you think about this case? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe so we can uncover more stories together. This content is compiled